So let me talk to you about what we're going to be doing with the Navy, which we're excited to explore and do a lot more with Navy at Newick. Um, I'll give you a framework for our company. Essentially, in this world that we live in today that is both hyper-connected because of technology and instant communication systems like Twitter, one could argue that might be good or bad. We don't know. Doesn't really matter. We're hyper-connected. We're also hyper-disconnected because of a thing called a pandemic. And if organizations, whether it's the Navy or business in general, believe that survival is going to depend on what they've always done, that might be a tough position to take. So we operate a marketplace and have for the last 2 decades today of over 500,000 registered solvers from around the world in 195 countries, territories, islands, and atolls that have come to InnoCentive looking for problems that our customers have, some with identity like the Navy will have, and other elements of the Defense Department and Intel community, EPA, and others that are anonymous, to bring their ideas, solutions, technology to our clients to solve their problem and be paid a cash award. And in the Navy and a lot of the government's cases, having an opportunity potentially to do follow-on work as well. So our solvers are bringing solutions to our clients' problems. Registering to become a solver, which is what we want to talk about today, and give you the opportunity that Mary had said, not only to work on Navy problems as we design those and post those, but also look at other problems that we have today, for example, for Habitat for Humanity and World Vision and other clients where your technologies and capabilities could also be valuable, as we hope they are for the Navy as well. We run this marketplace with what we like to call the Internet of Prepared Minds, people with talent, skills, abilities from very diverse backgrounds. Harvard studied InnoCentive and the world that we've created in the over 2,500 challenges we've designed for clients externally, and found that over 80% of the winning solutions are coming from people that don't fit the hiring profile of our clients. So this big, diverse world who looks at problems and chooses to solve is very big and diverse. If you've never worked with the Navy before, it's a great opportunity to engage. If you have, it's still a great opportunity for you to engage around the problems that we're designing. The reason why we design around the problem space is from what Einstein had said: if he had an hour to save his life, the first 55 minutes would be to determine what are the proper questions that need to be answered or asked, and take the last 5 minutes to answer those questions. So that principle of challenge design is important. We will be working with the Navy to define what problem they're trying to solve, which will also potentially include what they don't want, what they already know, or what might work, what the white space might be, and allow the solvers, your companies, you as individuals, to come in and provide your insight. This capability is significant because it addresses what the Navy and most organizations need is, I need something in less time, with less cost, and with less risk of failure. And this is what our marketplace does deliver to our clients. Today in the federal government space and for the DoD, we have instances where, and I'll show you for the Air Force, where we've had 100% success for the Air Force in over 20 challenges that we've designed for them. The government as a whole has an over 83% success rate in finding solutions using this methodology. We design the problems so that the ideas and solutions that you have pop up. So like throwing a rock into a lake, the ripples spread out to more solvers around the world, spread out to solvers in New England that would see something and say, I know how to solve that. I know it maybe from a different angle of attack or a different perspective, but those answers to the questions are designed to pop out so that the Navy can easily see those and find solutions. I took the liberty of giving you a visual of what this means. So one of our clients has done 52 global challenges with us. And if you look at all the colors on the map, this is where solvers from 130 different countries started to engage and were interested in challenges that were posted. That's in the total colors. The solver submissions by country involve both red and green colored countries, where from 71 countries, the client had a chance to review over 1,000 proposals and solutions to those problems. And in the end, where there are green colored countries, those 22 countries produced 65 solutions for our clients to those 52 challenges. And you'll note 65 means that in many cases there's going to be multiple winners to these particular challenges. Let me give you a couple examples just to bring it home from the abstract to the concrete. So InnoCentive had worked with NASA on a series of 7 challenges that were their pilot challenges, and one was on solar flare activity. NASA measures solar flare activity from the sun in 5-minute increments, and they had 25 years worth of data. And they had a model for predicting solar flare activity that had a 5-hour advance window and 50% accuracy. And they came and wanted to find something that would better that particular algorithm. So with the data and defining this as a challenge, they had a solution that gave them an 8-hour window of predictability with 85% accuracy. Any idea why, what the NASA experts' reaction to that was? Well, think about it, I'll tell you exactly what. It's not possible because the person who answered this wasn't educated, as they say, like they were the heliophysicists at NASA. Doesn't make the heliophysicists incapable of solving problems. They just hadn't taken this approach. So a little more about the solver. This person had been a retired wireless telecommunication expert from Sprint. So his job at Sprint was to look at solar flare activity and be able to predict it to shift towers so that there would not be a loss of service to Sprint customers. But the underlying story for him was that he had previously spent 15 years in plasma physics research. So he had more knowledge than NASA gave him credit for. And from that experience, NASA not only took the solution and applied it and still uses it, but improved it with that person in some follow-on work that they did to reduce that cost, time, and risk quotient. Another example of this, a more simple example, which talks about diversity. After the Exxon Valdez spilled, all this oil water mixture was being collected in Prince William Sound, and during that time, the Oil Spill Recovery Institute was set up by all the major oil companies and the federal government to study the cleanup. It wasn't going to be the first or last time oil spilled in subarctic temperatures. So the collection barge on the right-hand side of the screen was where, when they would vacuum out all this oil water mixture and put it in there, they would take the barge to the shore, use a large tube with suction to try and suction out all this material and get the barge back out for ongoing cleanup. What they found was in those temperatures, the oil water mixture became more like jello or thicker, and it was like cutting jello to get it out, so that cleanup was slowed down. And the end of the story is that we posted the challenge with a $20,000 award. The person who solved it while he was educated in chemistry, that really had almost no part in the solution. It was his observation from having poured cement during the school years on a technique that's used of taking a long vibrating metal rod, sticking it into concrete, vibrating it at a specific frequency to keep that mixture from setting up before the pour was completed and the air bubbles or air pockets were taken out. And he applied that to the cleanup simply by observation. One more close to home on the East Coast, and I'm almost done and want to take your questions. I'll also show you before we do that our website where you would register as a solver. Again, it's free and open to anyone. There are only exceptions if you're from Iran or North Korea, where the State Department says we can't take solvers from there. but this is really free and open to everyone. This challenge about potholes in Boston, the fuzzy picture of the two guys holding their cell phones actually is a picture of the winners. They looked at taking their cell phones with accelerometers in them and being able to measure where there might be a bump, a sizable bump, for people traveling with that, and using an app to capture it, that it could be then transmitted to the streets department in Boston to go out to see, is there really a pothole there? And could it be fixed without people calling and saying, hey, I just wrecked my bearings in my wheel from hitting this pothole that's huge in the middle of the road. So there was lessons learned in that. While they had solutions, they also reviewed some of the limitations and data that were being collected, and yet this was a big improvement for the city of Boston. So let me show you, before we get back to Mary and take your questions, let me show you a little bit about our system. For challenges, the website, so you get a little better flavor for InnoCentive and some of the work that we do. And with any luck at all, I'm going to share my screen, and there we go. So this is the InnoCentive website. When you come to InnoCentive.com, this is the landing page. You can go and look at challenges, which I'll show you in a minute, or if you want to solve a challenge and learn more, it's really easy to do that. Just by clicking on here, you'll find out more about what it means to be a solver, and you'll also go to register as a solver, which is a very simple process. You can see from the form, we're not asking for CVs, we're not asking for extraneous or lots of information. We get you to come in, register, sign up, and go from there. On the challenge side itself, and I mentioned the Air Force, when you come into the website itself through logging in, you can see the open challenges in our site today. There's a variety of different challenges, different foci of these challenges. You can see Volkswagen naming themselves, and other organizations being a little more anonymous. You'll also see challenges for Habitat for Humanity and World Vision that are today under evaluation. But you can come in and look at any challenge. You can come in to engage with any number of challenges as you see fit. You can also go to a pavilion, and in a pavilion you can look at topical areas of interest for you and the company. For example, I'll take you to the Air Force Pavilion, where the Air Force challenges, when you're interested in looking at those, are all here. So looking at some of the things that they've done over time in terms of runway inspection or repair, ideas for computational cognition, a lot of different things that the Air Force has been looking for and found using this process. So we're excited about the work that we're doing with the Navy. We've done work with them in the past. We're excited to continue that successful path that we've had with them, and invite you to check out the rest of the site in case there's other opportunities for you as a small business or individual contributor to add to the knowledge that our client is looking for in the solutions, and be paid for it if you're successful. So, Mary, I'm done, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Why don't you just stop screen sharing and we
Sure.
can just go back to grid view rather than the last slide.
Perfect.
And so we did have one question come through, and then I have some others as well that have come in through email. So Rob asked, you mentioned 76% success. How are you defining success?
Great question. So success is defined by a solver answering the question as prescribed in the challenge, and a client saying that's the one that answers the question, and I want to buy it. I want to pay for it. So we measure it that way. Now, to be very candid and transparent, our challenge type called ideation has a unique set of rules associated with it. which is it's a guaranteed award for all the ideas submitted on the condition that at least one solver is paid. For the calculation of 76.4%, we do not include ideation as a part of that calculus. It would be unfair because it's a 100% guarantee. So a solver says, here's my answer. The seeker, the client, the Navy, would say, that's what I need. That answers the question. It met the success criteria. I'm going to purchase that or award that challenge. That's how we count.
And so a question comes in about what is the process for demonstrating that the solution meets the challenge?
Great question. Thank you for that. The process is that in the design of the challenge, there will be very specific requirements that the solver has to meet. It's well spelled out in theoretical and reduction to practice challenges. So you'll know when you engage what you have to accomplish in order to prove to Navy that it is viable, whatever your solution is. We have some challenges that require prototypes to be built. There's a challenge that we had for a government client on mixing two highly viscous materials. And the metaphor for that was Play-Doh with other constraints around it that were very rigorous. That's different than ideation challenges where we've done things like how do you get young men to shave more often, or how do you clean a baby's bottom without touching it. That has less requirements, maybe more practical application, but the challenge will detail exactly what needs to be provided. And when you register and are working on the challenge, you can ask questions through a private project room that you have. The project room can accommodate teams, so you can have a team approach to this, or you can do it as an individual. And you can ask questions of InnoCentive. We can go to the folks at NUIC and ask, can we share more information with that individual team or that individual solver or not? But we manage that process. And great question. Thank you. I hope I answered it.
So as a follow-up on that, how do you ensure that people's ideas that are not chosen as awardees are not then used by the company or the entity that has hosted the challenge?
Yeah, another great question. So our clients sign agreements and they are keen and focused on not using what they don't pay for. So there's recourse a solver has if they feel like the client has taken something, used their idea and didn't pay for it. They have recourse to come back and ask us. The client may have prior art on something, and what the solver has submitted is already covered under prior art, but our customers are really intent on not using what they didn't buy. And it's well stated in the agreements we have with clients.
Great, thank you. And so for the DoD related challenges, do you have it, can you talk about were there follow-on SIBRs or STTRs or OTAs that have emerged from that engagement or from winning the prize challenge?
Thanks. There, I'm certain have been follow-on SIBRs or STTRs, excuse me. I don't have specific challenge by challenge definition of what that would be. That's really left to the client. There's one thing our Air Force client had said was their intent was to try and propagate the use of this methodology to clarify SIBRs and STTRs before the request to minimize the maybe unknowns before a SIBR or STTR is issued. But we know it's been done. I couldn't point to one in particular and say, here's a handful of these that have gone there, but follow-on work has been fairly consistent.
Great. And it is certainly a way for companies or individuals who may not have already had a relationship with the DoD to develop one, right?
Yep.
It's a way to be seen.
It is.
So there's a question about the IP rights. Could you explain, do they change from project to project? Is there a blanket right? How is the IP handled?
Great, thanks for the question. So each challenge has an IP agreement that's going to be presented to you when you say, I want to participate in the challenge, it's presented to you electronically. The license or IP agreements either have government use rights licenses, which is often the case for the DoD. They want you, if you have a technology, to advance the technology or scale it or present it to them. They will have a government's use right license, they'll have a non-exclusive license, or there will be a full transfer, depending on the scenario that we have. But it's tended to be, it's not tended, it has been fair to both people who present a solution as well as to the government. And one other thing just to mention, you can look at a challenge, you can look at the confidential details only after you agree to the terms of that license or the IP agreement. You don't have to submit if it doesn't meet your fancy or suit your fancy. There's no obligation to submit if it doesn't, but you will see a lot more about what the Navy is doing. We have had small businesses say, hey, if there isn't a solution to this, we'd like to be introduced to the client in order to have our technology seen, maybe in a different light. The great thing is, once the Navy starts seeing, and this has happened at all the DoD departments, once the Navy starts seeing what is possible in the marketplace, especially from small businesses or individual contributors, it opens up the aperture for them to come back and say, hey, I saw this on this challenge that would apply to something over here. Can we get in contact with that person? And we make that happen. So.
Great.
Okay.
How often has one successful solver provided additional solutions or others solutions on other projects?
I don't have data on it to say, I didn't answer question A, but it applied to question B. I could give you anecdotal stories of where that happens, but I couldn't point to one and to say it's 50% of the time the answer applies to other projects. That's really more in the client space, because our market or our work for the client has been in challenge design, market management, giving online review tools to the client to be able to use to evaluate. And then as the client, once they find something or once they find multiple things, what they do after that, they do. And we rarely hear back because of some of the sensitive nature of what we deal with as well.
Sure. Have there been cases where the prize challenge was used to satisfy the competition requirements for a future OTA or a contract?
Yeah, 100%. So the good news about what we do is that it's consistent with the FAR, fair and open. The submissions that come in are judged anonymously. So you will, as a solver, have a solver number, but they won't know who you are. So it meets all of the FAR requirements, so that the path to going to either an OTA or some other follow-on instrument is really smooth because of that way the competition has been conducted.
And is there an estimated range of time a solver puts into the challenge typically?
Boy, I can tell you that really goes all across the board. So let me give you two ends of the spectrum. On the mixing of two highly viscous materials, which is under evaluation, I've seen what's been produced. I know the process. It went over multiple phases. There are solvers who may invest hundreds of hours and tens of thousands of dollars in order to produce a solution. And for ideation challenges, which are getting young men to shave more often, that's a lot easier. So it's really going to depend on the degree of difficulty or specificity. And for that, you'll see award levels increasing. So the $850,000 for mixing highly viscous materials was commensurate with some of the work that would have to have been done. The story around that is they got submissions and awarded submissions from people in Slovenia, France, Romania, Nigeria, it was amazing for them in Canada, and it was amazing for them to see that the diversity of responses and completeness was pretty significant from people they didn't even know existed.
Great. Can you talk a little bit about university faculty and students, if they are, whether or not they can participate as solvers on their own, or if they have to, if they're coming in under the university banner, how that might work?
Yeah, great question. So universities and colleges are always a little bit different because if you're an employee, a faculty and staff member at a university, you're going to have likely an employment agreement that you have. And you have to, as an employee of the university, we had a client, just no disrespect to anyone from a university on the call whatsoever. A client said, you know, tech transfer offices are the hardest thing to process innovation through as a private sector entity because of the mission, and we understand that. So if you're a professor, faculty member, and you have an employment agreement, that everything you think of, work on during, whether on business hours or at home, is the property of the university, you may have an issue. I would suggest you go to the tech transfer office, talk to them. Students, on the other hand, tend to be different because they're there just generally to get an education, unless they're employed doing something on a project at the university where that might be a matter to consider. So we always suggest to university faculty, staff, and not as much the students, but if they're taking grant money or anything else, to check with the university, make sure that if you're going to work on a project, if you're going to work it on your own time and with your own resources, that you're cleared to do that.
Terrific, thank you.
Yep.
We're right about at 1:30, which is when we said we were going to end. So if there are any last minute questions, please add them to the chat now. I would like to thank everybody for coming. Just so you're aware of our timeline, or the process of our timeline, the challenge that 401 Tech Bridge is currently working with the Northeast Tech Bridge and Newark on is still being formulated. There are actually two challenges. They're still being formulated. Once they're formulated, they go through a review process with the Navy Contract Office and Legal Office, and then they can be posted to InnoCentive and challenge.gov. And so we're still working our way through that process, but you registered for this webinar today and you will be notified when the challenge goes live. I would encourage you, if you're interested in participating, that you might consider checking out the InnoCentive site, you know, between now and then, so that you are registered and ready to go when the challenges drop. There is a window that will happen, you know, the time to submit the challenges, so it's not an immediate thing. But that we are actively, 401 Tech Bridge is really actively trying to increase the number of small and non-traditional businesses that are doing work with the Navy and other government entities, so that those of you who are very innovative and are doing R&D can find other avenues for business opportunities. And we welcome the opportunity to help you participate in these Navy challenges. We also would welcome having a conversation with you about what you're working on, and how we might be able to help connect you into other services or into academic resources that can help you move your technology forward. So I want to thank John so much for his time, for making the presentation today, and I'd like to thank all of you for coming. If you have any questions, you can feel free to email me. My email address is there. And we also have recorded this webinar, and it will be available on our website at a later time. So if you had colleagues who weren't able to attend, you can share information with them and share our website with them, and they'll be able to participate from the recording. But again, thank you so much for attending, and we look forward to continuing to work with you in the future.